still amazes me how far we've come. Hola.
¿Vais haciendo el camino?
Sí.
Sí,
¿Vas a tener bastante difícil?
sí, muy difícil.
Lo sabéis.
Sí.
Turn your tired eyes toward the landed bride. Fickle fortune favors.
That's been something that's so rare. I haven't seen a friendship like that before.
And I don't know how much time you have. You know.
Mechanical malfunction.
Oh gosh.
It's hard not to feel like a burden in this.
So, fabrication.
Got it? Slow.
Oh, I'm cramping.
I think his body's kind of feeling the effects of it the last several days.
Sucks. I'm trying not to let Jess know that it sucks though.
Man, I'm not like who I am.
Okay, seriously, dude, it's time to walk.
I'm just faking it, guys.
I have no idea how far this goes. I don't either. Sometimes it's best not to know.
It's really hard to let somebody do that for you.
Yo, what's up, bro?
I don't know how we're going to be able to do it. There's an act of faith. These are waters that are too deep for me to handle on my own. That's pretty stupid. Honey, I love you if I die. I love you.
If I do have the time that I have here now, then let's enjoy it.
Well, good morning. How are you guys? Am I on? Can you hear me? Okay.
You're on.
Okay. All right. Let me get my chair turned off so I don't drive off the stage.
That would be bad.
Horrible. Yes. Well, thank you so much for having us. Look at you guys. You guys ready to rock and roll this morning? Yeah. All right. I saw you doing hand signs this morning. That's pretty awesome, man. Thank you. Cool. Thanks, Pastor Tim, for having us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Can we get the slides up here, please?
Well, we're working on that.
There we go. Thank you.
Well, I guess, we're going to start from the beginning. My name is Justin Skeesuck, and this is my BFF forever, Patrick Gray. And, yeah.
It's good to be here.
Good to be here. There's a picture of us. I don't know if you can kind of see it. I'm on the far right, and there's Pat on the left. He's wearing some awesome 70s overalls.
Do you remember the clothes that looked like they were made out of a tablecloth? Yeah. I'm wearing overalls that are made out of a picnic tablecloth. Thanks, Mom. Thank you.
With
awesome.
with no shirt, so that's even better.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'm like nervously like trying to grab at my chest or something. I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah. We've known each other for over 40 years now. We were born just over 36 hours apart in Ontario, Oregon, so not too far from here. And we have, our families go way back. Our parents knew each other in college, and our moms knew each other in church camp, right? Mm-hmm. Our parents are here. And then we just found out recently, my great uncle was best man in Pat's grandfather's wedding.
Kind of weird.
So, pretty crazy. So we go way back. We've been very, very blessed to have a wonderful friendship that we've developed over these 40 years. You know, we just traveled together and done all sorts of crazy things, as you can see. But I'm going to talk just a little bit about my own personal journey before we get into this crazy journey that we did a little over a year ago. And I'm going to start with when I was about 16. I was on my way from Ontario to Nampa to play in a basketball tournament, and a friend of mine was driving his truck, and I ended up rolling his truck on the freeway going about 80 miles an hour. Lost control of it and then rolled it on the median. And I walked away from the accident completely okay, except for some scrapes and bruises. And didn't think anything of it, except that it was just this really crazy car accident I was in. But about 6 months later, I started noticing weakness in my left foot. I was playing soccer in the fall, running down the soccer field. And my foot was just kind of flopping around. It wasn't quite working the way that it should. You know, it didn't hurt or anything, it just didn't work. So I brought it to my parents' attention, and they said, well, let's go see a podiatrist, because that's what you go see. And so we went to saw a podiatrist, and he said, well, I can't really help you. So he said, well, let's go see a neurologist and see what's going on there. And I'm going to condense this into this long story into a short story. But several years later, I was diagnosed with a disease, a progressive autoimmune disease called, are you guys ready? You're not going to remember the name of it, so get your pencils out because it's a long one. It's called multifocal acquired motor axonopathy. You got it? Yes. It is very, very similar to ALS in the way that ALS works. And basically what happened is that car accident I was in triggered this dormant disease that was in my body. And it's been a very, very slow progression. It worked its way up my left foot, like I told you, went up my left leg, then jumped to my right foot, went up my right leg, and stayed to my waist and below for many years. Very slow progression, but just continued weakness. So I have full sensation in my body, I just can't, my muscles don't trigger the way that they should. So basically my autoimmune system attacks my nervous system, and then my nervous system shuts down. So it just chooses muscles and says, yep, you're not going to work anymore, and then it doesn't work anymore. So for most of up until, my late 20s, going into my early 30s, stayed to my waist and below and had to use braces on my feet to walk, and then I ended up using braces and then a cane, and then I ended up using a walker, and then I ended up using a manual wheelchair, that you push with your arms, called manual wheelchair. Use that for auxiliary for many years, and then end up using that full time. So then I'm going to skip forward to the winter of 2010, where my life changed yet again. In January of that year, I started noticing weakness in my upper right shoulder. And within about a month or so, by the end of February into early March of 2010, the disease progressed pretty rapidly throughout my arms. I lost about 60 to 70% of my upper body use in a very, very short period of time. And you really start figuring out, how do you eat? How do you brush your teeth? How do you go to the bathroom? How do you get your clothes on? How do you hug your children? I had 2 kids by that time. How do you hold your wife or hug your wife? It becomes that time in my life became a very, very difficult hurdle I had to get over. And I describe it as this deep, dark hole. It's this First time in my life, I mean, Pat might be able to tell you, I'm pretty optimistic. I'm kind of a half glass full type of guy. And for the first time in my life, I can feel and see just complete blackness. And if you've ever been there, it is a horrible, horrible place to be. Horrible. So how do you work through that? You know, I've been very fortunate. My parents, I was raised in the Nazarene church. Christ is my cornerstone. And I have never leaned so hard on that cornerstone that I had ever had in that time of my life. And through prayer, through Pat's love, through my wife and my family, I was able to kind of look at that deep, dark hole, and I had two choices I could go down. I could go down that deep, dark hole, which was easy, or I could try to make the best of it and let God use me the best that he could, not knowing where my life is going to go. Would it be difficult? Yes, definitely. But I gave that up right then and there. Said, God, if you want something from me, you gotta do something with it. If this is my path, this is where I need to go.
So that same time frame, 2010, I remember getting the call from Justin when he had told me that he had lost the function in his hands. And something he hasn't told you is that his career up until this point was a graphic designer. And as you can imagine, a graphic designer, you use your hands all the time. So from the waist to below, that was no big deal. I mean, he's a positive guy. Yeah, it stinks. It's hard to navigate life in a wheelchair, but it didn't faze him. But then when his hands were suddenly gone, that was a whole different ballgame. And I'd never seen him down like that, facing that blackness. And anybody here who's had the experience of someone you love, someone you hold dear, who's facing anything that is just such a daunting experience, whatever it is, it's hard. It's hard to watch them go through that. And sometimes we take ownership of that. Sometimes we dive too far into that. And that's what I did. I kind of lost focus of what was right and what was true and what my role in life in this time frame. And I became so bitter and angry at God that I kind of lost my compass was all out of whack. I mean, I was furious. I don't know if anybody here, but I was pissed off at God. I yelled at him frequently. I was angry. How dare you? How dare you do this? His hands are his lifeblood, and you've taken that away. Who do you think you are? These questions are just resonating in my mind. And it was a terrible time. It was a terrible time in my life. So fast forward to 2012. Justin and his family are up here in Idaho, and we're at a church service. And after the church service had closed, Justin's in a conversation with one of the pastors. And it's one of those conversations I was kind of curious what was going on, so I'm supposedly talking over here, but I'm really listening over here. I was eavesdropping, But the pastor asked him, he said, Justin, if you knew right now in this moment, without any doubt, that God could heal you, you'd be made whole physically again, would you choose it? And he said, no. He said, no. And in that moment, it was like you had this shift in your thinking, this paradigm shift. It's like, oh, I get it now. This isn't my fight. It's his fight. And God is using this, and he wants to use me, but I am not seeing this for what it is. He wants to use so many people. I have an obligation, but more importantly, I have a privilege and a blessing to be hands and feet for other people. And this is a great example of that. I get to be his hands and feet. And I had not embraced that because of my anger and my bitterness. So I want to jump to some scripture here real quick, give you an idea of where we're headed. Hang on. There we go. So today we're going to be talking about God's provision and what that looks like to us and how we truly believe that we as a collective body are supposed to operate. And it's going to make sense here in a little bit. But in Philippians 4:19, And my God will supply all your needs according to his riches and glory in Christ Jesus. So, needs for one, not wants, it's needs. So I think that's a pretty important delineation. And then according to his riches and glory in Christ Jesus. So if we believe in a God who operates outside of time and space, if we believe in a God who is all-knowing, all-powerful, he's not confined by anything that we are confined by. And our lives are like, we start at birth and we have this linear path, we're going forward. But he doesn't have that perspective. I mean, if our life starts here and ends here, he's outside of it and he can see the end to the beginning to the end. He sees it all. So just perhaps his perspective is better than mine. Just perhaps maybe he's got what I need figured out better than I do, better than you do. And we had to embrace that. So, the journey.
So, Saturday morning in the spring of 2012, I'm sitting in my living room in San Diego. That's where I was living at the time. I live here now, but living in San Diego at the time. Just watching, flipping through the channels, just kind of minding my own business, and on comes Rick Steves on PBS. Who's familiar with Rick Steves? Woohoo!
Good.
I love that guy. Is he like the dorkiest, like nerdiest travel guy in the world? But he's amazing though, you know? And so I was just kind of stopped and was watching this episode, and he was talking about Spain, traveling through Spain, and northern Spain specifically, and talking about Pamplona, the running of the bulls and all that. And I was like, okay, I was just watching it. And the last like 15, maybe 20 minutes of that episode was about this pilgrimage called the Camino de Santiago across northern Spain. We don't really have pilgrimages here in the United States, but in Europe there's quite a few of them you could take. And I was like, that's interesting. And so I turned to my wife and I said, this would be crazy. What do you think about this? And she's like, well, if you want to do it, do it. And I'm like, okay. So I'm like, well, all right. Got her buy-in. So
Step one,
got wife's buy-in. You know, so about 2 weeks later or so, Pat came down for spring break with his family, and we would do that. We'd be very intentional with each other. We'd visit each other over breaks, and so they would come and stay at our house with him and his wife and his kids. And so I recorded this episode, and I showed Pat. And we had been talking about taking a trip together for a couple years, but just life hadn't quite panned out, right?
That's fair, yeah.
Not quite yet. So I recorded this thing, I showed it to him, and I said, what do you think? And his response was simple and direct. He sat in my living room, and I remember this very clearly. He said, I'll push you. I'm like, all right, cool. You know, both totally naive, like what we're getting ourselves into. And so Pat's going to tell you a little bit more about the Camino itself.
So by show of hands, who's heard of the Camino de Santiago? Okay, a few of you. Has anybody gone on at least a portion of the trail? Not yet. Notice I said not yet. That'll change. It'll change for a few of you. So Camino means way or walk. And so it's a walk, it's a journey. And this pilgrimage dates back to the 9th century, so it's pretty old. What happened is that the bones of St. James were moved to the cathedral in Santiago de Compostela, which is in the northwestern corner of Spain, and people began to walk to this location. It used to be they walk out their front door. But over time, trade routes became footpaths for this journey. The most popular one being the French way, which is the one that we chose to take. I don't know if it's going to work or not here. Hey, it does. So right here we have the tan is Spain, green is France, the gray is Portugal. The French route starts on the eastern side of the Pyrenees mountain range in France. So we're headed west, so we're on the wrong side of the mountain range. So we started in this little town called Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port right here in the southwestern corner of France. Went over the Pyrenees mountain range, crossed 500 miles west to Santiago in a wheelchair. Most people would say that's not the smartest thing you could choose to do. And most people would be right. But That's what we did. You stay in little albergues, which are hostels for the pilgrims, just little huts along the way. You might wind up staying in apartments or houses. It's a beautiful time to be completely unplugged from the world and just invest 100% in the relationships that are right around you. That's what we did.
So we're going to show you and kind of go through with you our journey. Day one, we had to go over a mountain range in one day. Never done, at least from our knowledge, had never been done before in a wheelchair. So we took a specialized wheelchair. You're going to see it in a second. I didn't take this one. I took a different one.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. I call it a three-wheeled baby jogger on steroids. That's basically what it is. It took 5 months to make and was made in Canada, and ended up getting it just a few months before we left. And so we're going to go ahead and talk about or show you how we went over the Pyrenees. So any people in here that are from Basque origin? Anybody? We're in like prime Basque country, or no? Okay, wow. Well, in Spain, in this part of Spain, we are right in the heart of Basque country. Absolutely beautiful. And so Pat mentioned we started in this little village called Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, which is in France. And as soon as we left the village, it was straight uphill all day long. Any hikers, bikers in the room? One. Past
a few.
two.
No, it's a few. Okay. How steep is 30%? It's pretty steep, right? Now, not the entire journey was that steep, don't get me wrong, but there were sections that were that steep. Taking a wheelchair up a 30% grade is not recommended. It's not recommended.
So you'll notice in these photos, out front we brought our buddy Ted, who helped us get over the Pyrenees for the first few days, or helped us for the first week almost, and then he helped us get over the Pyrenees. So Ted's out front, Pat's pushing from behind, and we had just left Saint Jean, and we're working our way up, and it goes straight up this hill. You can see my three-wheeled baby jogger on steroids, and how steep it is. There's Pat about to vomit. We're only about 3 miles up.
Yeah, that's not encouraging. It's a 13-mile day, and you're 3 miles in, and you're done. That's not good.
So we're working our way up, and we come up to about halfway up this mountain. It's about a 4,000-foot elevation gain, right? 40,000? 4,000? Not 40,000.
No,
4,000.
44.
But you start at almost sea level, or at sea level, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a pretty steep ascent going up, and it's just nonstop. So we get about halfway up this mountain, and I look ahead, and I see this stone cross. This kind of old stone cross. Who knows how old it is, but it's old. And I look ahead past the cross, and I'm like, no way. That can't be the trail. Can't be. And it was just boulders, just straight rocks and boulders. And to get a 250-pound wheelchair, that's how much my wheelchair weighed, with me in it, with gear and water, 250 pounds. So we navigate ourselves up to this section. Go ahead and play the clip. It was so steep that I was literally carried. Pat and Ted took out the sling and carried me. And, oh, there you go. Look at that. And we were just working our way up. It took us over an hour and a half to navigate just about 100 yards. They would have to pick me up, set me down, go up and scout, pick me up, set me down. And so I end up laying down as they're up scouting, and I'm just taking in the moment. You're just trying to we're just eking our way up this mountain. And I'm laying there on the ground, just laying on the ground. They took me out, laid me on the ground, and I'm just taking in this moment, trying to listen to the bells far off in the distance of the cows and the sheep, and you hear kind of like the eagle flying overhead. And then this happens. I'm laying there, and a Basque man comes over and decides to slap me in the face.
Gently.
Affectionately,
actually.
Yeah.
So this guy is up in the hills, and he's repairing a little hut, like an albergue, like a place for pilgrims to seek shelter in case they get caught in inclement weather. And he sees this anomaly of some crazy guy going up the hill in a wheelchair, and took it upon himself to come down and congratulate us by slapping Justin in the face. But what was awesome, though, is that after he talks with us for a little bit, he's going back up the hill to go back to the hut and do his work. And he turns around and he shouts at us in the middle of these hills. I mean, we're in the middle of nowhere. There's no one to be seen. And he shouts, "The impossible is possible. The impossible is possible." And it is. I mean, it's only impossible because you haven't done it yet, really. I mean, at the end of the day, there's a lot of things that are impossible just because they haven't been done. And those words of encouragement, boy, we needed those. We really needed those. We had no idea how much we needed those, though.
Yeah, we had no idea. So, after I get slapped in the face by a Basque man, Patrick and Ted put me back in my chair, and we come around the corner, and we encounter this. 200 yards of 8 to 10 inches of mud. Go ahead and, yeah. Cliff on one side and mountain on the other. And there was truly no way but to go through it. You know, I learned this great quote this last year. Sometimes the only way through something is through it. Right? And so we're working our way up, and we hit another couple stretches of mud, and we're working our way up, absolutely beautiful countryside, all day uphill, and after about 10 and a half hours, we finally summited. Finally, after about 5 false summits. So we made it. There we are looking down into Spain. We had crossed the French-Spanish border, and we realized one thing, that you can pretty much do anything for a day.
Right? So usually you get more time to figure out that you've kind of overextended yourself, but we found out on day 2 that we had some problems. So we got a little, I don't want to say cocky, but a little cocky. I mean, Justin mentioned that, first person to go over this route in a wheelchair. There's mountain routes for like the cyclists to ride on the road, but no one had gone over that was called the Napoleon route. And so I'm feeling pretty good. Ted's pushing Justin, giving me a break, and we're on a wide, flat trail. It's supposed to be an easy day. It's a little rainy, kind of in a forested area, and I turned to Justin and Ted, and I'm like, guys, we just did the Pyrenees. We totally got this. Don't get cocky. Never pays off.
Never pays off.
So I go trotting ahead down the trail, see where the trail goes as it bends, see what we have, in store for us. And as I'm trotting down the trail, I hear the sound of metal breaking, and Justin just being lunged forward in the middle of his 3-wheeled baby jogger on steroids, which just now transformed into a 2-wheel rickshaw because the front wheel is snapped off. It's gone, right? So what was amazing, though, is that we met people on the trail, and through their efforts and their help, and through the help of some people we met in the next town, we were able to get to shelter. We were able to get some great Spanish coffee, heard some great stories that we're not sure what they were because they were in Spanish. But it was amazing. And through their efforts, we got to Pamplona. Now, any welders in the room? What, really? Welders.
Oh, working on it. Okay, cool.
Welcome. A welder. Okay,
All right.
Well, you, sir. Aluminum, right? This chair's made of aluminum. Aluminum has a very narrow temperature range to work well when it's welded. Most metals have a wider temperature range. With aluminum, if it's too cool, the weld won't hold. If it's too hot, the area around the weld is compromised and will break. So we need someone who knows what they're doing in a foreign country where we don't speak the language so well. But we wind up in this little shop here. This is the medical supply store, and this gentleman's name is Ramon. Ramon happened to be visiting his girlfriend who runs the counter, and he's curious what these 3 stupid Americans are doing with this random aluminum wheel that's attached to something at one point. We get in conversation. It turns out Ramon has an interest in welding. He doesn't weld aluminum, though, but he's got some buddies that do. So he gets on the phone, calls his buddy. His buddy comes down to the shop, checks it out. No, it's too complicated. But I know somebody else who welds, so he calls him, explains it to him on the phone. No, I can't do that. And we keep talking to people, and we're playing this game with the 7 degrees of the aluminum welder in Pamplona. And eventually, we wind up finding a gentleman who is in a little fabrication shop outside of town. We get in the car, we haul this chair it's $8,000 of aluminum in a foreign country because we had, thank the Lord for a sponsor to get this chair for us. But we're dropping it off with someone we don't know. We have no idea about who this guy is, right? And when I ask him, can he fix it? He's like, I don't know. Come back tomorrow at 10, find out. I'm like, well,
okay.
You just gave me a whole lot of confidence, but okay, what can we do? But the next morning we show up, the chair's fixed, and 48 hours from the time the wheel broke, 48 hours later, we're back on the trail headed west because of these people who just surrounded us with help and love. It's amazing. Now, we're not going to do it every single day because that would be a long, long, long day here. We're going to fast forward to day 27. At this point, my body is shutting down. I'm failing. My calves are in extreme pain all the time. My thighs are just screaming at me. My body is not doing well. And at this point, we've had, up to here, had a lot of people who've helped us out, just random pilgrims, just strangers, just step in for a day, 2 days, 4 days, a week, you just never know. But on this particular day, we find ourselves alone. And it's what should shape up to be a relatively easy day, but it's been 27 days. And this hill that we're trying to tackle is not a steep hill, but I cannot get Justin up it. I'm pushing with all my might, and we're going 5 feet at a time. And my body's just like, no, I'm done. I am waving the white flag. I do not want to do this anymore. So Justin says, hey, let's just go back down the hill. Let's rest. Kind of takes stock of the situation, and we'll try it again. So we're down there for about an hour, resting. Still, we still haven't seen another pilgrim. Like, this is not what happens. You see people all day long, and it's still just the two of us. So we strap back in, I start pushing, and we get back up to the same spot where we were before, and Justin's just breathing words of encouragement to me. It's like, come on, you got this. Just one step at a time, 2 steps. You can do one more. We'll get there. And my body just stops. It's like, nope, I'm out. And I'm just feeling defeated. And then I start to hear footsteps behind me. And 3 beautiful words are uttered.
And we hear, can I help? Yes, please. That's what we both say. Along comes Victoria. Victoria comes up behind us. This is her in the photo. She's from Australia, lives in the UK, and works for an organization called SCOPE, which is the equivalent of the Muscular Dystrophy Association here in the United States. So she works with people with disabilities all the time. And she just came in and said, can I help? And we just said, please. We need to get to Villafranca, which is our next stop. And so she strapped in and got us to our next stop. And the reason why that's important is because of a couple things. You have those moments in your life where you do want to throw in that towel. Mm-hmm. You do. And in our case, that was a low part, probably the lowest part in our journey. Because you can see the writing on the wall, but then you have somebody that comes alongside of you and breathes life into you and gets you to where you need to be, right? Amazing, amazing little thing that happened that set us up for day 28. I'm going to talk about day 28, a bunch of new friends. A few days prior to this, we were in a city, one of the major cities you pass through on the pilgrimage, called Burgos. And it's this beautiful old city, and there's this cathedral that's in this city. And Pat and I were kind of roaming around in this cathedral, just checking it all out. It's beautiful, beautiful. And from across the cathedral, it's really quiet in there too. It's really funny, because it's really quiet in there. All of a sudden we hear this from across the cathedral, hey, aren't you Justin and Patrick? And we're like, yeah. And he said, hey, my friend, this is my name. My name is Joe, and this is my friend Richard. We're from Boise, Idaho. We're like, what? They said, yeah. They said, do you guys need some help? They're like, how are you guys doing? And you guys need some help? And we said, yeah, we're thinking about going over our 3rd mountain pass called O Cebreiro, which is on day 28. O Cebreiro. It's a very, very steep ascent. We had many pilgrims tell us along the way, and even locals that say, yeah, you don't want to go up this. It's way too difficult just on foot imagine, you can't make it. I said, well, we made the Pyrenees, so we'll at least give it a shot. They're like, no, like you don't understand. You have to be very, very fit to make it up this pass. So we knew it was coming up, and so Joe and Richard said, hey, you guys need some help? And we're like, yeah, we could use your help. So we agreed to meet on this day at this village at the base of the mountain. Victoria gave us that little extra push to make it to where we needed to be for that night so we can coordinate all of this. And so we meet him at the base of this village, and along with us at that time was our friend Michael Turner and his son Matthew Turner, who came over and helped us get over the last stretch. And so there's the few of us. So we meet him at this village, this little cafe, and we just get some quick provisions because we'd already walked about 11 miles, and now we have to climb a mountain after walking 11 miles. And we say hello and give hugs and all this stuff, and so we get up to leave, and the entire cafe gets up. And I'm like, who are these people? And I said, well, Joe turns to us and says, well, they're here to help you. And we're like, really? I said, yeah. He says, we've been sitting here for the last couple hours, and some other pilgrims were passing by and said, what are you guys doing here? And they said, well, we're going to get Justin and Patrick up O Cebreiro today. What do you? And they said, well, we can help. So we get up, and there's 12 of us total. Okay? Crazy experience. So we're going to roll a clip of raw footage. This is from our documentary that's coming up. And so we had just left the village, and we're working our way up towards the trail, and the trail splits. We can either take a road, a very, very steep road, or a trail, and everyone turns around and looks at me and says, Justin, what do you want to do? And I said, well, life's never easy, let's take the trail. So we go off onto this trail, and we come around the corner, and it is straight up. So steep that it was impassable. I could not even get over it. It took 6 people to carry me at any given time. These people carried me up a mountain. Carried me. So they would be 6 of us, 6 people carrying me at one time, while somebody else was carrying me. They would be holding their backpacks or water or whatever, and then somebody would tap out, and then I'm just being pushed, pulled, manhandled all the way up this mountain, and we're going through these little hamlets, and the villages are out looking at us, kind of seeing what's coming through. And by the time we get towards the top, we're escorted by the police. The mountain police show up out of nowhere. 17 people ended up helping me that day. We picked up pilgrims along the way. All those people did that for me. It's a very interesting spot to be in when you have all of those people surrounding you to get you up a mountain. They didn't do it for an award. They didn't do it for money. They didn't do it for, any sort of recognition or anything like that. They saw a need, and they filled that need. It's very humbling to be on the receiving end of that. And I've learned a valuable lesson out of that, and I'd like to share it with you. Being on the receiving end of help, there's this great quote that I learned, and it goes like this: when you deny someone the opportunity to help you, you deny them the joy in life. When you deny someone the opportunity to help you, you deny them the joy in life. I can see how happy it made those people to be a part of something amazing. I'll never forget it for as long as I live. And I'm sure that they probably won't forget it either, because they worked really, really hard to get me up that mountain that day.
So I want to go back to that scripture, Philippians. And my God will supply all your needs according to his riches and glory in Christ Jesus. Let's rewind back to 2010. The time frame from 2010 to 2012, I've never prayed for healing so hard in my life for someone. And that prayer went unanswered. God didn't heal him because he had something different in mind. So often, God's provision is you and I. It's not a miracle. The miracle already happened with the death on the cross, the ability that God dwells within us. If Justin and I and his family and all of us had waited on that miracle of his healing, we never would have gone to Spain. There would have been no Pyrenees mountain range. There would have been no wheel to overcome, broken wheel. There would have been no Victoria. There would have been no Joe and Richard overcoming this mountain of O Cebreiro. None of that would have happened if we were obsessed with the healing and didn't embrace the fact that God might have something else in mind. And there would have been no Santiago.
So 34 days later, one day ahead of schedule, we roll into Santiago. And waiting at the center of the square, which is where you end, which is right in front of the cathedral, are our wives. We had not seen them in over a month. And here we are coming into the square, and I describe it as like dying and going to heaven because there were many pilgrims that had helped us along the way that were waiting there for us. And many people we did not know, but like that guy right here, I don't know who that guy is. Okay. You'll see him again. He's a stalker. But many pilgrims along the way, and my wife, Kirsten, and Pat's wife, Donna, who are here today, were waiting for us, and by far one of the most, at least for me, one of the most happiest moments of my life. Very, very bittersweet, because we love our wives, and to be reunited with them after being gone, to see their faces again, was truly magical. I told you, there he is again. I told you, he's a stalker. Many people coming up and giving us hugs and kisses, which is really great. And those guys were, we met them in St. Jean. They're hitchhikers from Florence. There's Joe in the green and Richard in the tan. And we're still friends with them, with many of the pilgrims who we met. We're still friends with them. We talk with them periodically. We just saw Joe and Richard. We saw Joe over Christmas. He was here. And truly an amazing, amazing experience.
So when you talk about people you meet that you're still in contact with, a lot of relationships were developed on this journey, and it's no different than life. You meet people when you're in an intense situation, it's strife, it's struggle. There's a bond that's created. And one of Justin's rules when people would offer to help is that you had to tell them about yourself, right? I mean, you're going to be walking with each other for, hours on end. Tell me about yourself. So imagine if any pair in this room, whoever you are, if you spent 8 hours walking with somebody with no cell phone ringing, no computer to distract you, no meetings to go to, no events planned, you just walk and you talk. You get pretty intimate pretty quick. You share things that you probably wouldn't normally share. And there's one young lady that we met on the trail. It's the last story we'll share with you. But her name is Claudia. Claudia is from South Africa. And she helped us numerous, off and on for 2 weeks, I think. Yeah. Just kind of weaving in and out of our lives over this time frame. And when she shows up, she asked Justin if she can push him. It's like, yeah, of course. He never denies that help because he doesn't want to deny that joy. I mean, it's a beautiful thing to be a part of.
As long as you don't kill me, you're good. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Don't run me off a cliff.
There's one prerequisite.
Yeah.
But Justin asked her, just tell me about yourself. And Claudia is an open book, and we were not prepared for what she was about to tell us. So New Year's Eve 2013, we're on the trail. It's now June 2014 when we meet Claudia. So New Year's Eve 2013, she's with her family down in South Africa. And they have a habit of commemorating New Year's Eve with a picture, a photo. So they set a camera up on a little tripod, have the timer so it's counting down as the seconds count down on the clock, and they'll capture that moment at midnight with a picture. So the ticker's counting down, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, gets to 1, and as the shutter, captures that moment, masked gunmen come into her house, her parents' house, and her father is murdered. Right there, right in front of her. She's on the Camino because she has no idea what to do. She's filled with grief, with anger. She's confused, very bitter. And she's just trying to take stock of her life and figure out, what in the world am I supposed to do with this? About 3 days later, Claudia's with us again after she's told us the story. And we're tackling a hill called, it's a hill outside of a town called Castajeras. And it's not a terribly tall hill, but it's rough because it's loose gravel. It's about 0.7 kilometers long and 100 meters of elevation gain. So it's steep, but it's not like, no steeper than anything else we've tackled. But the loose gravel is just making it rough. And Claudia is there with us along with some other pilgrims, and she's going to help get us up that hill. 2 days later, after she got us up that hill, she sent us a journal entry about that day. And Justin's going to read this journal entry to you about what exactly happened.
So we had no idea this was even going on. She shared her journal with us later, and she gave us permission to share it with you all. And I'm going to read it, so you guys hang on, all right? Ready? Asked Patrick. Yes, ready. We all reply as we flex our muscles and prepare ourselves for the exertion and exhaustion that lies ahead of us. I'm strapped into a harness at the front next to John, who is a 60-year-old recycling specialist / U.S. naval officer and regular at the Burning Man Festival in Nevada. We look like a pair of oxen, I say with a smile to him as he wheezes and splutters next to me, beads of sweat sliding down his chin and onto the steep gravel path below us. While John and I do the pulling up in the front, Patrick is pushing with a firm grip at the steel bar at the back. He has calves the size of spanspecks after doing this for almost 2 weeks. Spanspecks are cantaloupes, I guess, okay. South Africa, okay. He is flanked by 2 Swiss girls who we met halfway up this hill. They started their Camino in Burgos, so they've only been walking for 2 days, and their fresh, unstable blisters are screaming at them with every step they take. Despite the shooting pain, they continue to push onwards and upwards with the rest of us. We're only halfway up this hill, and all 5 of us know that giving up is not an option. You guys are awesome, says Justin as he sits strapped tightly into his wheelchair as we slowly heave him up the hill. They have a custom-made Camino wheelchair for Justin with off-road wheels and a space for his backpack and various harnesses that can be strapped on to whoever is willing to help up the steep uphills and treacherous downhills. Patrick does most of the pushing, and I have actually started to think of Patrick as an extension of Justin's body. He wipes sweat from his brow, rearranges his legs, and holds ice-cold drink up to his mouth after a long day of trudging through the flat Spanish plains baking in the sun. I can't even begin to imagine how difficult it must have been for them to climb over the steep, rocky Pyrenees mountain range with its mudslides and loose gravel. When Justin told me about his condition, I said, "I'm sorry to hear about that." "There's absolutely nothing to be sorry about," he responded. Back on the steep hill. We are finally within 20 meters of the top. "The final push," gasped Patrick, while Justin sings a slightly out-of-tune rendition of "That's What Friends Are For." John, the oldest in our group by a good few decades, has tapped out, and we have replaced him with a passing pilgrim called Matt, who is now in the harness next to me, ready to pull like an ox. Patrick's sweat is cascading down his face, and the 2 Swiss girls next to him look like they're equal parts exhausted and excited. We've been fighting our way up this hill for almost an hour and a half. "Ready?" asked Patrick. "Yes, ready," we all reply, and we're off, inching our way up, a choir of heavy breathing. As we get closer to the top, Justin begins a countdown. 10, 9, 8. No, I think to myself, this can't be happening. The last time I did a countdown, it was followed by unimaginable cruelty. 7, 6, 5. maybe I should ask them to stop. 4, my calves are aching. 3, I'd be happy if I never have to endure another countdown for the rest of my life. 2, I don't know if I can do this, but I'll do it for Justin. 1, we get to the top and we're hugging each other, doing a victory dance, celebrating and kissing each other on the cheeks. And I'm crying because I didn't believe that a countdown from 10 could ever be happy again. At the end of the day, we sip our ice-cold drinks in the small town of Hontanas. The sun hangs low in the sky and makes me realize that there must be at least 1 million different shades of gold, and all of them are visible during a meseta at sunset. Justin looks at me and says, "Thanks for getting me up that hill today." I look back at him and say, "No, Justin, it was you who got me up that hill."
Man, I think that it's easy for us to sometimes underestimate the power of the relationships we possess with one another. I think God had something very specific in mind as he instilled plan A in you and I. And it's kind of daunting to think about that we're plan A and there's no plan B, but it's true. I mean, he left his spirit among us to do his work, right? And that can't happen without relationships. Our relationships are God's provision in many ways. I think about the Lord's Prayer, and when Jesus is teaching his disciples how to pray, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come and thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Let's camp there. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Jesus was very specific in that moment, telling us that, you know what? Heaven's a destination, but it's also an existence right here, right now. And we have the privilege of being that, being a place where heaven and earth get to intersect based on who we are. Because we can bring heaven or hell to earth through our actions every day. And Jesus wants us to bring heaven to the lives of those people around us through love, through compassion, through grace, through mercy. And I think there's no better representation of that than Matthew 25. So, 25, 31 to 40. I'm going to read out of my Bible here. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, he will sit on his throne in heavenly glory. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. I needed clothes and you clothed me. I was sick. I was sick and you looked after me. I was in prison. You came to visit me." And the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when do we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When do we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When do we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you?" And the king will reply, "I tell you the truth. Whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers of mine, you did for me." There's the obvious lesson there, the goats and sheep. It's often used to illustrate, for lack of a better term, who's going to heaven and who's going to hell. It's pretty clear. But there's something that we cannot overlook there, is that Jesus is painting a picture of here, of like, look, folks, you're it. You're my provision for the world. You are my hands and feet. You are the ones who can feed the hungry, clothe the naked, visit those who are broken and in need. We get that beautiful privilege. And it should not be taken lightly. And make no mistake, miracles still happen. I've seen them. I know they still happen. But so often the miracle is not the divine intervention of healing. It's the ability to face illness or death with grace and dignity, and let God's power and love ooze through who we are in the face of that strife. That's a miracle. That is beautiful. Our relationships are miracles. They are beautiful. Each one of us here intersecting with one another in some way, shape, or form in a positive, loving way is a miracle. And we cannot underestimate the power that each one of us has through just being hands and feet to affect the lives of those around us. It's a beautiful thing. And I heard a sermon a while back, a story told about a young businessman who, I'm sorry, I'm tearing up here. Jeez, I need a tissue. A young businessman who is in a very high dollar field, and he loses a multi-million-dollar account. It's just gone. He wakes up one day and the account's gone. It's just done. People are out. And he's racking his brain. He's trying to figure out, wait a minute, what did I do wrong? There's no reason that this should have failed. I did everything right. Everything, I followed the textbook. There's nothing that should have gone wrong here. And so he sits down with his mentor, and he's explaining the situation to him. He's like, what happened? How could this have failed? Because the only thing I can think of is that you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And his mentor said to him, the problem isn't your methods. The problem is your attitude. Because your job is not to make anybody drink. Your job is to make them thirsty. Our job is to make people thirsty for Christ. And we can be surrounded by people who know all the facts. We can be surrounded by people who know all the history, who know everything there is to know about Jesus in a book, in a textbook, in a class, but until they experience the love of Jesus, it means nothing. All of that it means nothing if they don't experience his love. They're a Pharisee. Jesus' love is so important, and we got to embrace that. And there's an old Chinese proverb that goes like this. It's I'm going to get this right. Hang on a second. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. It's true. You think about, you can have this beautiful tree growing in your yard that you planted 20 years ago. And we can be thinking about, oh my gosh, I wish I would have planted it 20 years ago. I wish I would have planted it 20 years ago. Or just shut up and plant it now. Right? Like, I don't want to look back and wish that 20 years ago I lived my life differently. I want to live it differently now. Each one of you and I, every person in this room, is God's provision for the world. Take that seriously. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.